Welcome to the Next Generation Unit on Forces and Motion created by the Syracuse City School District's 7th grade Next Generation Science team. This is the performance test that you will be administering in your classroom tomorrow. Below you'll find all the necessary materials in the picture provided. Below you're going to see an assessment form, the force and motion performance assessment sheet, which the block will be on, the student assignment sheet, which they will write on, and all of the necessary materials. Please note that there is tape also involved here. Here you see the pendulum block kits. Each one of these pendulum blocks is fitted with 2 sides and 2 ropes that will swing opposite on the desk for the student's assessment. Along with your kits, you will also be expected to take the force and motion performance assessment mat, which you see here, and tape it to each one of the tables that you'll be using in the experiment. This is the written portion of the student's exam. Each one of them is going to have part 1, part 2, and part 3. Have them read each portion of this, and in part 1 they're going to be drawing the diagram and the experiment on the table, and then they're going to perform the experiment here in part 2, measuring the distance that the block moves on the mat. Part 3 involves them graphing the data, as you see here on this graph, measuring the amount of washers versus the distance the block actually moved. Below there you will find many questions, 6 in fact, of the conclusion questions that the students must answer. Here you'll see questions 3, 4, 5, and 6 also that need to be completed by the student after the experiment. To begin the experiment, make sure you have the student exam, pictured here, along with the block in the bag with the 2 pendulums, along with the force and motion mat that you see here, taped to the very close end of one side of the table. Start by having the students take the block and the required objects out of the bag and placing it like so here on the mat. You can also see the student assessment sheet and a writing utensil. Very important to note that the taped side, the 1 washer, is placed opposite of the mat, and it should be hanging out over the side of the table. On the ruler side, please note that there is an open paper clip. Take one of the nuts and place them on the paper clip. Make sure the mat is taped very close to the side of the table that it'll be swinging on. If students do not have a mat close to the side of the table, the block will not move. The double pendulum block experiment is now ready for students. 1 washer is placed on the paper clip where the block is centered on the mat, and there is a blue weight on the far side that will not be moving. Now the experiment is ready. Have the students pick up the far side with a paper clip, the open nut, and swing it. The pendulum should move the block a specific distance. Here we see that the pendulum has moved the block. According to this, it moved it 4 centimeters. Students will then put the number of washers, 1, 2, and 3, here in the data table. On the first experiment, it moved 4 centimeters. Students should write that answer. Add now a second washer. After each attempt, make sure that the student has returned the block for the experiment back to the square where it should be started. Have students add the second nut and then repeat the same step, dropping the pendulum to see how far the block moves. Add the third metal washer. Drop the 3 nuts on the third and final experiment parallel with the table, just like the previous 2. Allow it to swing until it doesn't swing any farther. Part 1 answers include drawing the block, along with the string and the washers, along with the gravity arrow, the friction arrow, and the outside force. Please also allow air resistance if need be. The block moved 4 centimeters on the first attempt. The block moved 6 centimeters on the second attempt, and the block moved 23.8 on the third attempt. Students are going to connect the line. It should always show an increase of movement. as you can see here. By the time the students are done, they should have already been able to make the graph, connect it with a line, and answer the questions 1 through 2 and 3 through 6, as seen here. Grading your students. Below is the rubric we're going to be using to grade the Force and Motion Performance Assessment. You can see that each one of the parts is going to be graded out of 5 total points. You're going to be looking at the diagram drawn, you're going to be looking at the data table, and you're going to be looking at the graph. Here you can see where you can assign points, and you'll be able to read this on your own. Below is the final amount. It's part B. It's the 6 questions. They'll all be graded based on the number of questions they answer correctly. If they get all 6 correct, they get 5 points. If they only get 4 out of 5, they'll be getting 3 points. If they get 2 or 3 of the questions correct, they'll be given 2 points. And then if they get 0 to 1, they'll be given 1 point. Ultimately, this grade is out of 20 possible points.